any parking structure that would serve a commercial enterprise, and the restricted area could only be used for single-family homes. Insofar as I've been able to determine, the present plan has parking spaces on that restricted area, which I consider in violation of that restriction. I negotiated that restriction to protect myself and my neighbors. The restricted land runs between 268 Highland Street, which is the house my wife and I owned and occupied at the time. And that year, my wife and I conveyed that 268 property to my daughter and her family, and they still live there. My wife and I started to build a new house on the empty lot which was next to it, and that became 282 Highland Street. My wife passed away last July, so I'm living there now at 282 Highland Street. When we decided to build that house 10 years ago, we did it with the understanding that that restriction would have some teeth. We spent a lot of money building a new house. We had intentions of staying there for many, many years, understanding that we had that restriction and that we would be adequately protected and the neighbors would be adequately protected. Never did we dream that a development of this size would ever take place on that land. The only structures that we might have anticipated were single-family homes. And now we are faced with a multiple of about 90, I guess, in terms of the number of families who will be living in that area. As I reflect on all of the reasons the neighbors and others have given about the problems with this development, safety, traffic, density, wetlands, further burdening the town schools, the infrastructure concerns, I cannot grasp the reasonableness of this project. I find the reasons so many and so compelling, especially the public safety issue, that I think there's a moral duty on the part of this board to deny the application. I heard one speaker at the last meeting say there is no perfect place for a 40B project and only imperfect places. But this place is neither a perfect place or an imperfect place. It's the wrong place. There's no question, in my opinion. If I were on your board, Mr. Chairman, I could not in good conscience endorse this application as presented to you. I believe my rights and my neighbors' rights are being trampled on with this project. And I call on you to stop the project, which from every conceivable vantage point is ill-advised. It creates clear and present dangers, not only to the neighbors, but also to the people who will live in those proposed units. The entire project, in my opinion, is a distortion of a neighborhood which will be irrevocably destroyed and may well result in the loss of life with it. And I do not say that lightly or for the purpose of trying to be dramatic. I truly believe that. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would like to submit a written legal opinion supplementing my remarks that I've made here tonight. And I thank you.
Thank you. Would appreciate that, Mr. Kingston. Let me just ask Mr. Caggiano a question, because this issue of the restriction on the property was in the beginning portions of the application, and it really hasn't received a lot of emphasis, and my recollection may be faulty. Because my recollection was that the project, while originally planning to utilize some of the restricted land, was in some way modified so as to not be on the restricted land or adversely affect the restricted land. And I guess my question to you is my recollection correct? And to what extent is the restricted land involved in this project, if at all?
The buildings are completely out of the restricted area.
Okay.
The parking lot is there.
The parking lot is on the restricted area?
That's right.
Okay.
But the parking lot doesn't violate the deed restriction, nor
Well,
do the buildings.
Mr. Kingston may think it
No,
does,
I understand that, but we have a difference of opinion on that.
Okay.
The deed
Mass
restriction was,
Housing has also looked at this issue as well, prior to issuing their project eligibility letter.
Okay.
I
that-
believe Mass Housing would tell you that they're not in the business of giving titles, so.
Sure. You know, they asked us for additional information and looked at it.
Well, are you going to be submitting any legal opinion letter regarding the,
We did already, I believe in our initial submission was the project, the application that we submitted for the project eligibility letter, those materials, which included that.
which
information-
included that the
information
land was
regarding the
being
deed
used for
restriction.
parking? But-
No, it included the discussion of the.
The deed restriction.
Right, and was there, were the legal citations and a legal argument as to the applicability of the, because I can go in and dig it out, I just
But if
don't,
it's not, we can forward it to you.
I just don't remember it as being an issue of significance, and I'm glad Mr. Kingston brought it up because it's been in the background, but has never been emphasized.
she agrees that it's an ownership.
Yeah, yes, and does that include, Mr. Casciano, does that include your materials that you've submitted, a plan showing the restricted area according to the covenant that Mr. Kingston agreed to?
I'm not sure. Do our plans delineate the
Yes.
deed restricted area? They do?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd also like to point out, Mr. Chairman, that if this deed restriction did apply or did have an impact on this property, that is a private land matter between private individuals and should not be something I would contend for the boards to
Well, how could you
consider.
lawfully park on the land if the restrictive covenant prevented it? Wouldn't that throw your parking count off?
Well, there's a law that says that the board, when making decisions on comprehensive permits, are not allowed to make those decisions based on private land rights. So although you could grant the
You could park,
comprehensive
you could
permit.
park on you could park on Mr. Lombardi's backyard using
So
that
the-
type of
so the
argument. That
abutters-
doesn't make any sense to me.
So abutters have the right to appeal your decision regarding comprehensive permit, and that's when that issue would be raised at that point.
Well, why should Mr. Kingston have to go out and, he's a distinguished lawyer already, but why does he have to go out and retain Choate Hall and Stewart to bring an appeal that's going to cost him tens of thousands of dollars on a matter where you may have no
Sure, I don't.
lawful right? It doesn't make
You
any
know, I
sense
don't
to me.
have an answer to that. I didn't make the law. I'm just trying to suggest that there's a body of law out there that discusses this particular issue.
Okay, and
Yeah, we should see that. I mean, you know, you're under an obligation to provide evidence of site control. This is right on point, right? So I think we're mixing a couple of issues, and
please.
that's a different issue than whether or not you've got site control, which is really the issue that I think has been raised. So
The-
it would help to know a little
Sure.
bit more about that.
Sure, I'm happy to provide the information. However, also site control is something that's within Mass Housing's jurisdiction. And they've looked at the deed restriction, decided that we had adequate site control, and that's not properly within the purview of this board.
I disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have site control to get a permit from the Board of Appeals. So it seems to me to be elementary, but
So let's say within a reasonable time before our next hearing, will you be able to provide us with some materials on
Sure.
that? Okay, that's great. And Mr. Kingston, you can certainly supply us with any memorandum and,
I appreciate that,
Plans that-
Mr. Chairman, and may I have access to the legal opinion, I think you say you submitted, Mr. Casciano?
I don't know that it's a legal opinion, it's...
it doesn't go that
It's
far.
more a generalized finding of site control. But well, I'll tell you, Mr. Kingston, whatever materials Mr. Casciano supplies to us, even though they may already be part of the record, and forgive us, we'll make sure that you get a copy of
I
that.
very much appreciate that.
Now, in terms of the
How about the 15th or the 17th?
continuance date,
Wednesday.
Ms. Fitzgerald is suggesting either the 15th or the 17th of of June.
Either. Either. Either.
Why do I have the 16th down for Concom? That must be just a miss.
Do the
I just must
17th?
have put in the wrong date.
Looks like you put it in
Oh,
a week
okay.
later, which is why it wasn't in your calendar.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I'm available either of those days.
15th and 17th.
Oh, 17th.
I'm free all of the dates.
Any-
Wide open.
We're talking what,
5th and 17th?
It doesn't work.
oh, I don't like to do the 18th. I mean, God forbid.
Yeah, I mean, what is it that we need to do by the 19th?
Well, you
We have to end the
You
evidence.
could
End the
close the
evidence.
public hearing by
Okay.
the 19th.
Yes.
Although, seriously, you could always ask the applicant for, short extension of time of that time period. I mean,
Well,
it's not, it's not in cement. I mean-
But our
Well, it
evidence
is if
just,
the applicant
Yeah,
says
yes,
no, and
no,
the
but-
applicant has continued
But
to
if the
say.
the applicant's the one that's just submitted this information like on a Monday, for a Monday hearing, so, I think that Mr. Caggiano did say at another hearing that, if it was a short period of time, not 7 months.
Well,
that
he may have.
it was a short
You
period of time.
work that out between us. I'm not in the business of squeezing Mr. Caggiano. We've got a date here, and that's the statutory date,
Yeah.
and I'm happy to close the evidence before that date. If the parties want to
Yeah.
continue that for a month, or 2 weeks, or 2 days, that's fine too.
We're available on the 17th.
Okay, but I think, Mrs. King, what are your preferred dates?
it's the 17th is fine.
How's the 17th for you? I'm free on the 17th. Mrs. Fitzgerald is collecting signatures, I think. We'll give her a second.
7 o'clock?
I think so.
Ginny, no way on the 15th or the 17th?
We're talking about the 17th.
Okay,
17th?
Ginny?
That's fine.
Okay, 17th.
Would that be here?
Yes.
Okay. And that'd be at 7 o'clock? Is that better? Okay, so we're going to adjourn until the 17th of June, 7 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
don't know whether my presence is required, but I would like to attend the next meeting, and I can't make the 17th.
What date could you make?
I could make the 15th, or the 18th, or the 16th.
I prefer not to go so close. I don't like the 18th date if just something
I
happens
can't
and
do
we,
the 18th anyway.
so,
The 16th, Board of Selectmen have already posted what they're meeting about on the 16th.
Board of Selectmen. Who cares?
So they wouldn't be able to attend.
Oh, you mean this is, okay.
Well, what
Okay,
time
yeah.
is their meeting?
Katie, how about the 15th? Monday, the 15th?
It's fine.
15th.
Mr. Chairman, a couple members of the applicant's team are not available on the 15th.
What time
Somebody
is the
fill in.
selectmen's
We don't-
meeting? Aren't they earlier?
I mean, if that's the only,
Yeah.
if that's the only date that everybody
It's kind of
else.
looking,
Okay.
that might be the only.
Let me ask you in terms of, is it the time that's bad or just the date?
It's the entire evening. I have a board that I sit on, that's having its annual meeting that,
Okay, what time, may I ask what time the meeting is?
it starts at 5.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Sometimes we could start, do you know what time it ends?
It should be over by 8.
We'll be here.
Is it a distance from here, or is
It's
it
in Brookline.
Brookline? It's not going to work for you. It's going to put you under too much pressure.
It will not work for me, but if it is really the only date that works for everybody else who matters here, I'm not going to hold up the process.
I think we have to
Yeah,
do it on the 17th. Do you have a colleague that could,
I will find someone who can attend in my place.
okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your courtesy. So we're going to adjourn this hearing till June 17th at 7 o'clock in this,
Yes.
okay, in the Blue Conference Room. We're still expecting Mr. Dulaski's materials and Mr. Burke's materials on, let's put them on Monday. And I will talk with Mr. Burke. He may not be able to be present on the 17th. He may not even be able to do it. We'll just play it by ear. But
Mr. Turner.
anything else?
You mean Mr. Turner?
Yes, what did I say?
Mr. Burke.
Mr. Burke, yes, Mr. Burke, he'd be available. Mr. Turner, we'll just play it by ear whether we can get a response in, but that's going to be it, folks. And Ms. Conlon, is that good for you? The 17th, is that a good date for you? And so we'll certainly reserve whatever time you need to be heard, because the evidence will still be open. Okay, great. Okay, so with all of that, thank you very much for coming tonight. Thanks for your participation. We're adjourned until the 17th of June, 7 o'clock, Blute Conference Room. Thank you.